So welcome, everybody. Glad that you are here. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Kim to you all. So I've been getting to know Kim a little bit more, and it's super cool, right? Kim is really into transformation, both individuals and organizations, and she uses coaching, mentoring, training as the modalities that she works with. Credentials are a master's degree in advanced information technology, bachelor's in information systems, a smattering of certifications, including certified Scrum professional, SAFe program consulting, and Scrum at scale. She's been walking her Agile path since 2008 and has worked with a variety of companies in industries such as healthcare, banking, investments, and insurance. She's currently a principal consultant at Applied Frameworks, where she gets to work with some folks that many of you who are regulars might know, Anu Smalley, Joel Bancroft Connors, Carlton Nettleton, and lots of other fine folks over there. And Kim is on her personal journey to become a certified Scrum trainer. So without any further ado, Kim, it is your show.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. And Chris, I really appreciate that warm welcome. And I'm really honored to be here today to hopefully share my experiences and my perspectives with you about cross-functional teams and how that correlates to the 7 ways of software development. So I'm hoping that in our short time together today, you'll gain a greater appreciation for why are cross-functional teams so important. How can I build my team's cross-functionality, or how do I even know whether I need to build their skills? So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I think Chris did a pretty awesome job of introducing me already. So thankfully, I don't have to repeat all of that stuff and talk too much about myself, which is even better. I'll just simply add a few personal points. Yes, this is a Maryland flag crab logo because I am a native of Baltimore, Maryland. Love my steamed crabs, so I'm definitely on the East Coast there. But about 9 years ago, we did move to Charleston, South Carolina. I always joke that I was a Southern girl trapped in a Northern girl's body, and now I'm kind of where I belong. Love being near the beach and so forth. So Charleston's a great place to visit if you haven't made it there yet. I'm the mother of 2 wonderful daughters. My oldest is a freshman at the University of South Carolina. Now, I realize I'm talking to a lot of California folks here, and one of my colleagues is a graduate of the University of Southern California. And he is very quick to remind me quite frequently that my daughter's school is the other USC and that his is the legit one. So just thought I'd call that out in case we have any other Southern California graduates here. My youngest daughter is a freshman in high school. She's a pretty avid soccer player, hence the soccer mom logo. And in fact, she sustained a pretty nasty ACL and meniscus injury almost a year ago, this month. And tomorrow night, she takes the field in competition for the first time in almost a year since that injury as a member of her high school team. So I'm pretty psyched about that. And then, of course, I have my cute little dogs here. And that's me in a nutshell, and all that other Agile stuff that Chris was just talking about. So that's just hopefully for you to get to know me a little bit. I encourage you to reach out. Love connecting with new folks. But now I just kind of want to talk about cross-functional teams, because that's actually why we are here. So, you read the Scrum Guide and you hear Scrum teams should be cross-functional. Okay, great. Well, what does that really mean? And I went ahead and created or added the 2 excerpts from both the 2017 and the 2020 Scrum Guide out here in our Miro board. And back in 2017, it just said they need to have all of the competencies that they need within their team so that they don't have to depend on anyone outside the team. And then similarly, the 2020 Scrum Guide has been updated, but they just say all the skills necessary for that team to be able to create the value needed. So it seems like a pretty simple explanation. And so, I was working with a team that was supposedly cross-functional. And that team inspired this talk. So I've given this presentation a couple of times, but again, the reason why I felt like it was necessary to continue this conversation from this team that I encountered all the way back in 2018 is because I think this is still very prevalent even today. So this team that I was working with was a large banking institution, and they were comprised of a very talented group of dedicated individuals. And you could argue that they were cross-functional based on the Scrum Guide's definition. They had all of the skill sets they needed to be a cross-functional team. We had Java developers on that team, C++ developers on that team, quality assurance testers, UI developers. They had everything that they needed, and yet this team was still struggling. So I was really trying to figure out, okay, what is going on here? And as I started to observe and reflect more, it finally hit me, because the Scrum Guide also says, the Scrum teams don't have titles. There's no sub-teams, and it's whole team accountability. And what I observed with this particular team is that they very much strongly specialized in their specific skills and areas of focus. And this was particularly true with the Java and the C++ folks. So we had sub-teams happening, and the Java folks did not want to touch C++. C++ folks were kind of resistant to get into Java. Some of it was a little bit of a fear factor. Oh my gosh, can I learn this new thing? Some of it was, I just don't feel like I have the time or the ability. And some of it was truly a lack of desire, particularly with the Java folks. They're like, oh, I don't want to learn C++. That's old technology. Why do I want to get involved with that? So we had a real challenge here. And as a result, I observed significant waste on the team. So the team was not meeting their commitments, sprint over sprint. We had team members that were just so over capacity. They were working around the clock to get things done. They were mostly the C++ folks. Meanwhile, the Java folks hardly had any work to do. So they're looking for work. They're grabbing stuff all the way down in the product backlog, pulling it in, half the time not even asking permission, just starting to work on things. It was a bit of a mess. And so I'm like, this is not going to work. This is supposedly a cross-functional team, but they are truly not cross-functional. So we had to do a lot of work in that area. We did make some good progress there, and I can kind of talk about that at some other point. But the bottom line is, we really need to think about what we mean by cross-functionality on a team. And I mentioned the word waste, and I think that that's a pretty, that's a kind of pretty powerful, somewhat harsh word. So what exactly do I mean by waste? And I got this, I started thinking about this based on the book by Mary and Tom Poppendike. It's called Lean Software Development and Agile Toolkit. And in that book, they correlate the 7 wastes of manufacturing to the 7 wastes of software development. And so what I was observing and what I've been seeing over the course of these years is that the less cross-functional a team is, the greater likelihood that one or more of these wastes are going to surface. So what I wanted to do was kind of briefly walk through what each of these 7 wastes are and how I see them tying into the lack of cross-functionality on a team. So the first waste is partially done work. And this can result in many ways. It could be you have backlog items that you never even got started on. It could be that they were coded, but you didn't get them tested. Or maybe you got them tested, but they weren't fully integrated or not fully documented or not fully deployed or what have you. So there's a lot of different reasons why work might not be completely done. Sometimes you have partially done work because of other wastes that we're going to talk about in a minute. So whenever you have a team that is not able to get all of their work done in a sprint, then you have this waste of partially done work. And I see a lot of teams working in these mini waterfall type sprints because they get all the coding done and they don't quite get all the testing done. And so then that carries over, and then it just creates this vicious cycle over and over again. So what really needs to be happening is the team needs to be swarming on those work items, working together to get them done, having that full team accountability so that they don't end up with this partially done work at the end of the sprint. So cross-functional teams do that. They work together even outside of their core competencies to get that work done. And this is where I like to say, you check your titles and your egos at the door. You don't get into this, well, I'm a Java developer, I can't test, or I don't do that. We all just need to work together, right? Even defense can score goals. So that's kind of one of the things that manifests when you don't have a cross-functional team. The next waste is extra features. And this is also known as overproduction. And so I see this in a lot of different ways as well. Sometimes this results because developers tend to like to add bells and whistles, or as we say, gold plating to something. Well, I was in there and I had some extra time and I was like, you know what, like it's not in the acceptance criteria, but I'm sure we're going to need this at some point down the line. And, I'm just going to go ahead and add it now. So a lot of times we think we're being, proactive or even having lots of foresight. Wow, isn't that such a great idea? When in reality, we are creating more waste. We are adding extra features that we don't need at this given point in time. Likewise, that team I was telling you about, the large financial institution, grabbing stuff all the way further down on the backlog, essentially that's extra features too, because as we know, that backlog is fluid and it's emergent and it could change. And so we could be building things that we have ultimately decided that we don't need anymore. So we have to keep in mind that anytime we are adding something, any type of code, that all of that has to be tracked and compiled and integrated and tested and has to be maintained over the life of that system. So every bit of code increases complexity, is a potential failure point, and could be obsolete before we ever even use it. So we have to realize that this is not a good thing, that this is actually waste. And so not only are you not helping your team members to get the actual work done, you could actually be contributing to more partially done work because you're adding these extra features. So cross-functional teams, they're not hunting down extra work. They're helping their team get the work done that they said they needed to get done. The third waste is relearning. And this occurs anytime where we have knowledge, we don't use the knowledge that's available within the team, and we kind of end up reinventing the wheel. One example that I've seen in organizations is that many of them have a completely separate user acceptance testing team. So you could have a team that, they're working in 2-week sprints. Maybe they have quarterly releases, but every 2 weeks, they're doing their sprints. They might be meeting their definition of done every sprint. They might be getting everything done, thoroughly testing all their code, but then sprint over sprint, they're adding more to the mix. And then weeks down the line, all of this ends up being in the user acceptance testing team. And that team is kind of starting all over again. Like, okay, so what are all the requirements here? We need to understand this. Let's go back and do this. Oh, I think I found a bug. Oh, maybe it wasn't actually a bug. So there's a lot of research that's happening for bugs that may not actually exist, retesting code that was already tested. So when I see that, my question is always, okay, what is it that this UAT group is doing that the team isn't or couldn't be doing? What skill set is missing? Is this team actually adding some sort of additional value, and should that value be moved into the Scrum team to create more cross-functionality? So that's just one way where I see relearning happening, but it can take other forms too. Anytime you're handing off to another team or having to create excessive documentation for some reason, or going through a lot of extra reviews or toll gates, there's relearning that's happening all along the way. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible and keep all of that knowledge within the team and not have to worry about passing that on to so many different people because we have all of these different extra processes and things. The fourth waste is delays. So this typically happens anytime you need to reach outside your team for support. And I once worked for an organization that had a dedicated database team. Now this team had about 4 DBAs/DBEs on it. and they were supporting about 20 Scrum teams. And let me tell you, a developer on a Scrum team did not even have permission to add a simple column to an existing database. Everything had to go through these 4 people for 20 teams. It was pretty crazy. And so there was a lot of coordination and communication back and forth and trying to get things on their backlog and so forth. And so these Scrum teams found themselves constantly waiting on the database team. So they're constantly having delays to get their work done. And then a lot of times it didn't get done. So guess what? Partially done work, the other waste. So as you can see, a lot of these wastes kind of all tie into one another. So we kind of dug into that, realized that having this separate team was actually masking a much larger issue, which was the fact that this company's database schema was entirely too complex. The company hadn't invested in simplifying it and training their developers to be able to modify it. So we started to kind of chip away at that over time and started to bring more of that onto the team and relaxing permissions for what changes could be made. And so that was a really big help. And so that's one example of, a delay because you're waiting on someone outside the team, but that can happen inside the team as well. If you have only one person on your team that can do a peer review, for example, if there's only one person on your team that knows a particular area of the code and they're out sick for 2 days, you're going to have delays. So how can you try to avoid that? So cross-functional teams don't have these delays. They don't have as many skills specializations. So they don't have as heavy of a reliance on people both inside and outside the team. The 5th waste is handoffs. Again, that database example was an example of a handoff, but when I think of handoffs, I also think a lot about the communication patterns that people are having. So are we just throwing things over the wall? Oh, I finished writing this code. I'm going to put something in my Jira system and tag the person and let them know that it's finished. I'm like handing it off, but you're not really, again, collaborating and really, pulling them into the process overall. How are you communicating that a defect has arisen? Are you like just putting something in some system somewhere and letting it sit? Or are you actually pulling that person over, to your desk, either virtually or in person and saying, hey, like, I want to show you something. Let's take a look at this. So handoffs, result in a lot of delays and information loss as well. So anytime we choose to communicate in a less effective way, we're compounding that waste. The 6th waste is task switching, and this manifests itself in a lot of different ways as well. So one way I see this is where you have that subject matter expert and they're constantly getting pulled into other teams because those teams don't have that expertise as well. So not only is that impactful to the individual that's being yanked around to these different teams, but it's also impacting the team that the person's on, because then they're losing the benefit of having that consistency. So that erodes the team's stability and their velocity as well. Also, when teams are not cross-functional, the WIP, or work in progress, tends to be higher. Because again, I'm a C++ developer, so I can only work on this backlog item. I'm a Java developer, so I can only work on this one. I'm a such and such, I can only work on this one. So now, guess what? We have 3 backlog items that are in progress at the same time, and we're increasing our risk of potentially done incomplete work or partially done work. And in reality, if we could all just swarm on one of those and get that fully done before we work on another one and lower that WIP limit, we're going to decrease our risk overall. So a lot of times that task switching is occurring, when you have too much work in progress, task switching across the entire team there. And then the last waste is defects. So again, defects, we're going to have them. And timing is really important when it comes to defects. You could have a very critical defect, but if you detect it within a few minutes or a day, it's not that big of a waste. But you could have a minor defect that's not discovered for weeks and weeks, and that could end up being a much bigger issue and much bigger waste. So again, going back to that checking your ego and your titles at the door, cross-functional teams, when they're jointly contributing to the testing and the overall quality of the work that's being produced, that's going to help to eliminate that waste of defects. So those are the 7 ways that I often see and why I see cross-functional teams being a big reason for a lot of these wastes. So now I'm kind of curious to understand, what waste are you observing in your organizations today or in the teams that you are coaching? So I wanted to do a breakout activity, and we have 2 frames here, frames 13 and 14, and the 7 ways. So the first 4 are in frame 13, and the next 3 are in frame 14. And what I wanted to do was, Chris is going to put us into breakout rooms of, maybe about 4 or 5 people or so. And I'm interested in having a little discussion amongst your smaller group, and just put some sticky notes onto the Miro board where under which column you think that waste is that you're observing in your organization. Now, if you're not familiar with Miro, I can very quickly just tell you that you should hopefully see this left-hand navigation here. And this very first icon is the sticky note. And all you have to do is click on it and pick your desired color and click again, and it's going to put a sticky note there, and then you can just start typing, and that's how you would add something to the Miro board. So you just need that left navigation and that very first icon there. And if you have any questions, then go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we can try to help you, or your breakout room members might be able to help you as well. Any questions on what we're trying to do?
And can you tell me one more time what we're supposed to be putting on the sticky notes?
Sure, absolutely. I just wanted, now that you've heard about these 7 wastes, I just wanted you to reflect about some teams that you've worked with or are currently working with, and what waste might you have seen on those teams. Maybe those wastes aren't related to cross-functional teams, but maybe they are. So I'm just kind of curious to see what have you experienced in the past. Maybe some of them are very similar to what I explained, but you might have some different things as well. Does that help? All right. So Chris, do we want to, maybe we'll go ahead and just put about 4 minutes on the clock. Does that work? And just give folks time for that.
That works. So you'll have 4 minutes in the breakout room. At the end of the 4 minutes, there'll be a little final warning pop up that will give you actually 30 more seconds to wrap things up. And then you will be transported back into the main room. So are you ready for them to be sent off, Kim?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen again. So do we have everybody back? Looks like we do. Okay, great. So that was just a short little exercise just to kind of get the wheels churning a little bit in your brain. Some of the waste, I see a lot of waste for sure. I noticed quite a bit in under task switching, which is pretty common. I see that quite a bit. One of the things that I like about thinking in things in terms of these 7 wastes is that we've probably been observing these things all along, but we didn't necessarily have a way to classify it. So now when you see something that isn't working quite right, you can say, what kind of waste is this? Now, not all of the things that you have listed on this board are necessarily related to cross-functional teams, and that's okay. But many of these things might very well be. And so having more cross-functionality is just one of many ways to be able to eliminate and prevent these wastes from occurring. So it's really a great way to be able to think about what's happening in my organization and why is it important for me to resolve this, because we have too much task switching going on, or we have too many defects and so forth. So right now, we've just kind of wrapped up talking about these 7 wastes, and me trying to convince all of you why it's important to have cross-functional teams so that we don't have all of this waste within our teams and organizations. So really the next question is, well, how do I know what my team actually needs? I know we have waste. I know we're not really fully cross-functional, But what do I do about that? How do I figure this out? So one of the tools that I like to use is called a skill and capability survey and matrix. I did not create this matrix. It was created by two gentlemen, Troy McGinnis and Adam Urett, of a company called Focused Objective. And thanks to Creative Commons licensing, any of us can use it. So very, very generous of them to share it with us. So I wanted to share it with all of you because it's a tool that I use quite frequently. This survey matrix it's really multiple tabs, and it consists of a skills survey sheet, and then a consolidated skills sheet, and then a heat map and scorecard. Now, what I would hope that most or all of you will do at some point after this session today is that you'll go out and take a look at the spreadsheet yourself and experiment with it a little bit. My goal here today is to just give you a little bit of familiarity about how this kind of works. So I'll walk you through an example, and then we'll do a little practice one. Probably won't be perfect, but just to give you a little bit of exposure about how you could use this tool as well. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the first thing is a survey sheet. The idea here is that you would give this survey to each person on the team, and each one of them would fill it out for themselves. So the key here is that you want to obviously identify what skills your team needs in the first place and kind of map those out. You might want to, talk amongst your team to identify what those are. And then each person would rate themselves where they thought they were. So in this particular case, change a light bulb, install a ceiling fan, build a patio. And then that person would say, oh my goodness, I can do that independently. I have no idea how to install a ceiling fan, but with a patio, I used to do some landscaping back in the day, and I could probably figure it out with some guidance. So each person would do that for themselves. Then the next tab in the spreadsheet is the skills input. So now the idea is that you would collect all of those surveys from everyone, and then you would put them all together in this singular spreadsheet. So separate column for person one's responses, for person two's, and person three's. And ultimately, each of these skills, they're in a drop down. So you have a template in the spreadsheet where you have the different categories. And then when you get into this next tab, it's just simply a drop down. So you're looking at their survey and you're clicking some buttons and filling in their responses. So that gives you your skills input. And then because of the magic of Excel, you can take all of their inputs, and then it goes into another spreadsheet, another tab in the spreadsheet that is the heat map scorecard. And so it starts to map out both by counting the number of people that have different skills and also scoring the level of their skills. So if we take a quick look at this one here, if I said that I'm very skilled at something and I can also teach it, that would give me 4 points. If I'm someone that can do it completely independently, I would be considered a creator and I would get 3 points for that. And if I'm a doer or maintainer, meaning I have limited experience, but I can kind of hold my own a little bit, that would be 2 points. And if I could figure it out with guidance, I would be considered a novice and I would get 1 point. Now, if you recall, there was also a column that said, I wouldn't know where to start, I know nothing. That would be a 0. So those folks don't even get counted whatsoever. So if we're looking at this example here, installing a ceiling fan, for example, there's, one person and another person, 2 people. Well, wait a minute. There were 3 people on this spreadsheet and 3 people responded to installing a ceiling fan. But, one person said they know nothing at all. So we don't even count them. They're not even on the charts. So only 2 people are on the charts. One is skilled and can teach others. So they're in that teacher column. And the other could figure it out with some guidance. So as you can see over here, they're kind of in this doer maintainer kind of field. Actually, I think they were supposed to be in the novice field. So, but there's only 2 people that are being counted. And then the spreadsheet also does some fancy math, and it gives a skill risk score. So as I mentioned here, you've got this person that can install a ceiling fan. So we have one of them. So when we go back here, they were skilled and can teach others. And so therefore they get 4 points. And then when we went back to the skills input here, here is have limited experience. So that was the second person. Have limited experience is a doer or maintainer. So they get 2 points. And so as you can see here, they have a total of 6 points in the skill risk column for installing a ceiling fan. I know math gets hard, so might take a minute to process that. So the idea here is that when you go through your list of all of your skills for your team, and then you start to map out who has which skills and what level, you're getting a count for each of those skills. And then you're also getting the skill risk. And that skill risk is basically taking what is my minimum number and my highest number, what is that range? And then the spreadsheet figures out for you, okay, where am I in this range? So obviously here, we had a range of 1 to 8, and building a patio is the highest risk right now for skills on our team. So the counts are important as well, because obviously if you have a skill listed here and you have 0 people that can do that skill, well, obviously we have a problem, right? We have a gap. If you have 1 person that can do that skill, they may be a teacher. They may be awesome at it, but guess what? They're 1 person. So we have a risk there, right? It's a single point of failure for that 1 person. If you have 2 people that have a skill, well, guess what? That's looking pretty good. But you also do want to look at, well, where are those 2 people? Where do they fall? If you have 2 people on the team with that skill, but they're both novice, well, we probably want to do something to start to kind of move and shift those folks left, right? How can we turn that novice into a doer or a maintainer, or into a creator, or into a teacher? So it just helps to kind of map things out and really give you this broad view of where you are, with your team and your organization. So the spreadsheet itself, again, I invite you to take a look at that. It's a Creative Commons thing. I find it very helpful. There are some other things here that talk about what is the anticipated future need and what's the lead time for training and so forth. We're not going to get into all of that today. Again, I'm just trying to introduce you to this, this tool at a higher level, but I would like for us to practice this just for a few minutes. So here's what I've done. I have created 5 different groups. So we're going to create 5 different breakout groups. And each group has a skills input frame and a heat map scorecard frame. So group 1 would be frames 19 and 20. Group 2 would be frames 21 and 22, and so on. So what we're looking for you to do is you're going to go into your breakout groups. Let's pretend that I'm in group 1. All right, however many people are in our group, hopefully we should have no more than 10 people in that group. You're going to go in, you're going to grab an empty spot in a column, and you're going to put your name in there. And then you're going to look at this gauge below in the green stickies. So Kim, I'm going to tell you right now, I have never skied a black diamond in my life. I would not even know where to begin. So I am going to give myself a 0. Water skiing, I have tried it once or twice. I could probably hold my own with it with some practice. So I'm going to give myself a 1 there. And likewise, I have done a little bit of boating.
Hey, Kristen,
and
what's up?
With some guidance, I could give myself a 1 for that as well. So that's the first step that you're going to do, is you're going to go into your breakout rooms, you're going to find yourself an empty column, and you're going to give yourself 3 scores for each of those.
No, I'm on in a webinar. What's up?
I think somebody's not on mute. So, all right. So hopefully we can all get through that part very quickly. It should just maybe take you like a minute or 2 to put your name in and give yourself a rating. Then what you're going to do in your breakout rooms is you're going to go to your next frame, which is your heat map scorecard. And you're going to say, okay, how many 4s did we have? Let's go back and count. All right. So you're going to have numbers for however many people, and you're going to figure out, oh, we had 2 people that were a 4. They can ski really well. So we're going to put a 2 here. Okay. How many people were a 3? Okay. We only had 1 person that was a 3. We had 1 person that was a 1. I mean, sorry. Yeah. We had 1 person that was a 2, and we had 2 1s. All right. So maybe that's what your count was. Now you're going to calculate your risk score. This is where the hard math comes in. And this is why you want to use the spreadsheet in the end, because it does it all for you. But I want you to kind of just see how it's working here. So then what you're going to do is say, okay, 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. That gives me 11. 2 times 1 is 2. So now we're up to 13. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, 15 total. That's our risk score for skiing a black diamond. Let me stop there. I said a lot. Is that making sense? Questions? I see some stuff in the chat. Let me just see if there's anything.
Hey Kim, the only thing I've done is go down a black diamond, but I was drunk at the time. Where was that go?
But how do you score that one?
Yeah, exactly.
That one can get a little interesting, David.
Yeah.
That
And
to
there was
me
certainly a
sounds
risk. There was certainly a risk there.
That is another meetup conversation altogether. I think Chris, can you schedule another meetup, and we're going to just talk about David and his drunken black diamond skiing experience.
I made it down and I survived.
We need to do that probably in a bar over some drinks as well. So
Yeah. We'll meet at the bottom of the hill.
all right, so let's see if we can make this happen. Again, it's not the end of the world if you get a little bit confused. I'm just trying to introduce this to you. So let's go into our breakout groups. Let's take about, can we do 6 minutes, Chris, and see how far people get? We'll add an extra minute or 2 if it looks like the groups need a little bit more time.
All right.
So again, put your name, give yourself a score, do some funky math. The instructions for doing the math are up here, but it's really just that adding and then multiplication.
Sounds good. So I'll send folks off. We're going to have 6 minutes, then you'll get that 30 seconds final warning at the end.
Perfect.
And if you are looking for help, there is a request help button when you're in the breakout room, and we might be able to send you some help that way. So.
Okay. Welcome back. Do we have
You
everybody?
left 10 seconds too soon.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Again, this is kind of just to start getting the wheels turning a little bit. And my hope is, again, that you will explore this tool at your leisure. I did go ahead and decide that I would pick on group 2 here because they had theirs all completed. And so if you look at their heat map here, you can see that there's actually someone on the team that would actually be able to teach other people how to ski and get down a black diamond, potentially not in a drunken state like our friend David. And then we also have a couple novices on the team. So they're looking pretty good in terms of skiing the black diamond. But as you can see here, their lowest number is a 2, and therefore their highest risk right now is around ability to water ski, because at the moment, we've only got folks that are in that novice category. So the good news is that we have 2 people on the team that can do that. But that's the lower the score, the higher the risk. And therefore that would be an area where if they could get some of these novices to kind of move into being a little bit more comfortable with that skill, they're going to be a lot better. So it just kind of helps to give a lay of the land of where your team is. So that's the whole goal of this. Now, a couple things that you'll want to consider, as well, though, is that, you want to focus on areas of expertise and not just skills. So if you just say, okay, who here can code in Java? Well, okay, that's a skill, but what about, do they understand this particular area of the code, or do they understand this product line, for example, and able to code to that? So you want to also focus on areas of expertise. Don't discount small tasks. You might have a batch job that the team needs to run every week, and it only takes 5 minutes to run it. But if no one on the team knows how to do it, and you have to go out to another team and it takes them a week to get back to you, well, that's a gap. And so you want to try to avoid having those gaps, even for those smaller tasks. People will sometimes overstate their abilities. People will sometimes understate their abilities. Sometimes they understate their abilities because they just simply don't want to do it. And that is natural. We're human. That's the way it is, right? So sometimes you just have to kind of take that into account, and you're going to want to update this on a frequent basis to kind of see what progress you're making. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next 2 slides, simply because we're going to be hitting our time box shortly as well. And also because this is pretty much taken verbatim from that spreadsheet, so you can get back to it. I just wanted to point out the fact that in the spreadsheet, they do give you some pointers about, okay, well, if I'm trying to build a team and have them be effective, what kind of formula should I be looking for? So make sure you have at least 2 people who are doers for each of the skills. Know what skills are more in demand, and you might need to have a teacher for those, and so forth. Make sure you don't have all teachers on the team and that sort of thing. So it gives you some good pointers there. And then likewise gives you some pointers around, all right, now how do I grow this team to ultimately be able to split the team and stabilize the team? So building that bench of novices, promoting doers into teachers, and so forth. So again, I encourage you to take a look at some of that's listed in the spreadsheet. The important thing to think about here is that we've talked about why we need the cross-functional teams. We've talked about how can I figure out what skills do I need? And now the question is, how do I actually build those skills? I know I have a gap. What am I supposed to do about it? My daughter, I told you, my younger daughter is a pretty avid soccer player. My older daughter, we tried to get her to play soccer. She was such a rule follower, and she was little, probably like 6 or 7. And the coach came over to her and said, "This is your box. This is your position. You stay in this box." Let me tell you, she stayed in that box. And so when the ball came literally right to her, and we're like, kick the ball, she was like, "It's not in my box. I'm not going to do it." And we were just so frustrated. So we're like, "You got to get to the ball." She's like, "But it was outside my box." We do that a lot. We do that a lot in our teams. Defense can score goals too. So we need to not kind of just, put ourselves in these smaller petitions. We need to kind of look outside and say, what else could I be doing to contribute? We also want to embrace lifelong learning. We did not all come out of the womb knowing how to write Java code, but yet somewhere along the line, I have heard so many times, well, that person is a tester. They can't code. Well, they might not be able to code today, but that doesn't mean they can't code tomorrow. So why do we forget that people are constantly learning? My grandfather learned and taught himself how to play the guitar at 91 years of age, just on his own, just decided. Like it is inherent in who we are as humans to be able to constantly learn. So we need to be able to promote that within our teams and empower our teams to do that, and just help other people understand that, yes, you do have that capability, because sometimes we don't always have confidence in ourselves. So a couple things around that. So here's what I want to know. I know we only have about a minute left, so we're not going to go into breakout rooms, but in frame 34, there's a question here. What do you think you could do to help build skills on your team? Or what have you done in the past to help build skills on your team? So let's just take about 1 minute and grab some sticky notes and throw some things on the board. I certainly have my own ideas and I'll share them. But I'm first curious to know, what do you think? What have you done, or what could you do?
And I think you need to make that one visible to the rest of us. At least in my view, it says hidden for now.
Oh, this one does? No, we're on frame.
People are in.
We're on
Okay.
frame 34. Yep, frame 34. I don't want everybody stealing my ideas, Chris.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I was looking in the wrong place.
So we're on frame 34. I just want to kind of just see what other people have done. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute while I do that. Just wanted to catch up on the chat here. I like it. Great minds think alike. So I know we're right about at time, but I'm going to move us down to this frame here. These are some thoughts that I have as well. Right. Number one, you want to assess people's interests. Like, see what people might have a passion around, because they're going to be more interested in learning if they have a passion around it versus if they're being told. So you want to try to bring people along and encourage their interest. Having backlog refinement activities that are very inclusive. So it's not just the tech expert on the team that's, going to these different discussions. Bring the whole team into the conversation. Make sure acceptance criteria is clearly defined. Conduct code reviews. Do pair and mob programming. Shadowing. A lot of times, I know in my CST journey, when I was training with other CSTs, they had this see one, do one, lead one. So first I would observe, and then I would do a little bit, and then I did the whole thing. So kind of do that progression. Formal training, train the trainer, solid documentation, instituting WIP limits so that the team has to work together on something a little bit more, and reserving capacity. Don't plan out your sprints so that everyone is completely and fully utilized. It doesn't leave any time for learning. It doesn't leave any time for pairing and things along those lines. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I have. And then again, it's really kind of just this whole process. First, you need to identify that waste is there. Then you want to really understand your team's skills and their capabilities using that matrix. Then you want to coach others, realize their interests and potential, talk to them about what their interests are. Then you kind of work on promoting that skills development and being able to prepare your team and your organization to scale. And along the way, a lot of times you start to eliminate this idea of hero culture, because a lot of times people want to keep that knowledge to themselves because they're so afraid of, and they want that job security and so forth. So a lot of times that's part of the reason why these things happen as well. So we kind of have to break through that barrier. So when you kind of follow that process, then, hopefully you'll be able to build a much stronger team and hopefully create a lot more motivation and empowerment and happiness and morale and all of that. So with that, there's a couple sources here that I've provided that'll be in the deck that I share with Chris. And other than that, I just want to thank you all for your time and really enjoyed being here with all of you today and appreciate your participation.
Yay, thank you for joining us. That was fantastic. Fantastic. Give a Zoom applause for Kim. Rock on.